Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for another Hub 101. My name is Imani Moore. I'm the engagement coordinator here with the Austin Community Hub.
Hi, I'm Synovia, and I'm the Community Resource Coordinator for the Austin Community Hub.
Thank you, Synovia. And I just want to go ahead and start by introducing a little bit about who we are and what it is that we do. The Austin Community Hub was designed to be a dedicated space where we can engage with the members of our community. So we're here to serve as a connection between Austin residents and all the services that are offered by ACT's network of partner organizations, such as childcare, job training, youth programs, legal assistance, and so much more.
Each one of our Hub 101s gives you all an opportunity to get to know our different partners and get live answers to your questions. Hub 101s take place twice a month on Zoom and Facebook Live.
And today, the moment that we've all been waiting on, we're joined by Austin Coming Together's very own Lashana Bundy, who is here to talk to us about the development of an Austin Community Land Trust. Uh, we'll end with the Q&A session after the presentation, so feel free to drop any questions that you have in the Q&A box on Zoom, or if you're watching from Facebook Live, drop them in the chat there. And again, thank you all for being here. Lashana, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks for that introduction. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here and give a brief introduction. As Amadi mentioned, I am Lashana Bundy. I'm the Community Land Trust Coordinator with Austin Coming Together. And thank you everyone for just joining this live. Today, we're going to just dive into the fundamentals of what a community land trust is and the work that we're doing right now to start the initiative. And with me today, I have our two partner organizations, Oak Park Regional Housing Center and Westside Health Authority joining us. They're going to assist us with the Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. And I'm going to pass it to Athena Williams and Jenna Polak, who's going to introduce themselves. And yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Athena Williams, and I'm the Executive Director of Oak Park Regional Housing Center. Glad to be here today with our partners as we initiate the beginning of a community land trust for our Austin residents. I want to introduce to you today Ms. Jenna Pollock, who is the new Community Development Manager for the Oak Park Regional Housing Center. Her focus will be to work on the land trust as it's being developed, as well as other property development projects that are happening through Oak Park Regional Housing Center.
Nice to meet everybody. Looking forward to this conversation. And I'll kick it to Justin.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Justin Hill. I work at the Westside Health Authority. We are really happy to be a part of this collaboration. As we all can see that Austin is changing, but we want to make sure that all the new vitality that's coming into the neighborhood is centered around the people who have been here since the 60s. And so this is a great opportunity for us to center the community members who has suffered the disinvestment. And so I'm really happy to have everybody on the call. I'm not going to talk much. I just want to say thank you so much to Austin Coming Together and to Oak Park Regional Housing. So everyone have a great time, and we will talk later.
Thanks. Thanks, Athena, Jenna, and Justin for those introductions. Without further ado, we're going to get started. So our goal for today's session is simple. We're just going to look at the real estate trends in Austin and the challenges faced with our community. And then we're going to dive into how Community Land Trust works and how they can help address these challenges. And then finally, we'll discuss ways that you can get involved in shaping Austin's future. So today we're going to break down the who, the what, the where, and the why of Community Land Trust. We'll start by showing you some demographics of the Austin community and understanding what a CLT is and why it matters. And then we'll explore who's involved, where CLTs exist, and how they can function. And then finally, we'll discuss the impact they have on communities and next steps for engagement. Okay. So just a little bit about the Austin community. Austin is home to nearly 97,000 residents, the majority, about 75%, being Black, followed with 18% Latino and a 5% white population. However, unemployment, which is about 14%, and economic challenges persist, and many households struggle to keep up with the rising cost of housing. One of the biggest challenges we face in the household incomes in Austin, they have not kept up pace with the rising housing prices. So the medium income in the medium household income in Austin is about 40,000, while in Chicago it's over $70,000. And for renters, it's even lower, around 35,000. And while home buyers need an income of around 80,000, some home prices continue to rise, and affordable housing is slipping out of reach for many of our residents. So let's take a look at how home prices have changed in Austin over the years. Let's take this home on Erie Street. In 2013, it sold for $36,900, and in 10 years, it sold for $385,000. A similar pattern can be seen on Laramie Avenue, where a house that sold for $99,900 in 2022 jumped to over $300,000 in just 1 year. And these price increases are making it difficult for longtime residents and Austin residents to buy homes in their own community. And on Augusta Boulevard, a home that was purchased for $190,000 in 2010 recently sold for $475,000. And these price increases are happening all over Austin, making it harder for longtime residents to afford homes in their own community. And they've called home for generations. So many families are being priced out, forced to move to other neighborhoods, or even out of the city entirely. Meanwhile, there are still numerous vacant lots and buildings that can be transformed into affordable housing. And this trend highlights the urgent need for solutions like a CLT, which can ensure that housing remains affordable and accessible for residents and future residents. So something that Austin Coming Together does through canvassing the neighborhood, we've noticed an opportunity for us to create sustainable community-controlled housing through utilizing vacant lots and properties that can serve the CLT. So Austin has a number of vacant lots and underutilized properties that could be repurposed for affordable housing and community development. So the potential solution. So before we go into more about what a CLT is and how it's structured, just going to do a little backstory on how it was developed. So CLTs aren't just a new idea. In fact, CLTs were actually started by farmers. They've been around since the Civil Rights Movement, and the CLT model was developed during the Civil Rights Movement as a way to secure land for Black farmers in Georgia. New Communities, Inc., which is one of the first CLTs, was created in 1969 and became one of the largest Black-owned land trusts in the U.S. today. This model is being used in cities across the country to fight displacement and keep housing affordable. So we talked about how community land trusts work, but it's important to note that CLTs aren't just in the US. They have a global impact, and around the world, communities are using CLTs to create permanently affordable housing and protect local land. This video takes us to Canada, where we'll see how the CLTs are making a difference.
Building and guarantees its long-term affordability.
Okay, great. We saved one property, but that's just a drop in the bucket. What about the rest of the neighborhood? What are they going to do? Buy up all of Kensington Market?
Well, kind of. You see, the main reason why Kensington Market Community Land Trust exists is to acquire properties in Kensington Market for the community. Whenever a property comes up for sale in this neighborhood, this organization will make an effort to acquire it, rather than see it sold off to another private buyer. And with each new property, the Community Land Trust gains a larger and larger voice over how their neighborhood changes. In fact, they're currently working on more properties right now, like this parking lot at 25 Bellevue Avenue. The plan here is to use that land to build non-market housing.
But this isn't just happening in Kensington Market. Community land trusts are increasingly being used to protect culturally significant neighborhoods all across North America.
Take Boston's Chinatown, the downtown east side in Vancouver, the Bronx in New York, Toronto's Chinatown, San Jose, Harlem, New York, the Parkdale neighborhood in Toronto, Logan Square in Chicago, Atlanta, and many, many other neighborhoods. People are forming community land trusts to acquire properties in response to real estate pressures.
So that begs the question, what even is a community land trust?
In In the broadest sense, community land trusts are nonprofit organizations that acquire and manage land at the direction of their membership, which is typically open to residents and other stakeholders.
That membership decides on what their community needs and uses their land to address those needs.
For example, if the neighborhood needs more affordable housing, they could lease some of the land to a co-op or nonprofit housing provider. If they'd like to support arts and culture, they could develop studio spaces or performing venues. If the goal is to celebrate Toronto's natural wildlife, they could build a raccoon petting zoo, hypothetically.
The point is, it's up to their membership. So, how does that membership make decisions?
Well, a community land trust is kind of run like a mini democracy. Its members elect a board who make decisions for the land trust, and that board is typically required to have representatives from different stakeholder groups. A common governance structure is the tripartite model, where 1/3 of the board needs to be made up of residents inside the land trust properties, 1/3 made up of members from the surrounding community, and 1/3 made up of government officials, housing experts, and other stakeholders. Getting this balance of power right is key, because it ensures that a community land trust doesn't only act in the interests of any one stakeholder. This isn't a glorified NIMBY group.
I think that's what makes community land trusts such a promising idea for neighborhoods facing gentrification. Through its governance structure and ownership of land, a community land trust can serve as a way for all members of a community to have a say over its future, not just those who can afford to buy property.
That also makes a community land trust a very formidable advocacy group because they regularly engage with neighborhood stakeholders. Community land trusts hold a ton of soft power locally, even if they don't hold a ton of land. Take, for example, the Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust in Toronto. For a while, it owned just 3 properties in Parkdale, but ended up being a major voice for the neighborhood, publishing policy papers, conducting research on neighborhood issues, and regularly organizing residents through various committees, classes, and other initiatives. Just last year, the City of Toronto transferred 81 single-family home properties into their portfolio.
Okay. Now that we've seen a video to give us a general idea and paint a picture on what a CLT is and how it can benefit the community, we're going to dive in more into what a community land trust is. So a community land trust is a nonprofit organization that acquires and holds land permanently to ensure that it remains affordable for housing, businesses, or community spaces. The key concept is that the land is owned collectively while individual homeowners own their homes, and this structure keeps housing prices stable and it prevents displacement. A CLT can own the land, ensuring that residents can purchase the home for less and keep or purchase their home for a permanently affordable price. In return, being able to pass their home down for generations, promoting generational wealth. But here's how a CLT can help a community. So when a community faces challenges such as commercial rents, overcrowding and displacement, vacant buildings, rising housing costs and displacement, and lack of long-term affordable housing or community open spaces, residents, community organizations, and local stakeholders come together to form and manage the CLT. The CLT works by acquiring and holding land in trust for the long-term benefit of the community, ensuring that the housing remains permanently affordable. And by doing so, communities can take control of their land and ensure long-term affordability in their community. So now let's put this into perspective with a real life scenario. Meet Jack. Jack is a paraprofessional at a local school in Austin, earning about $40,000 a year, right around the median income for the area. He wants to buy a home in the neighborhood where he grew up, but with rising house prices, it feels almost impossible for Jack. Based on his income, Jack's recommended home price range is around $125,000 to $150,000. However, most homes in Austin are selling far more than that, and many also require expensive repairs. Even though Jack has about $15,000 in savings, it's not enough to cover a down payment and the necessary renovations. The most that Jack would be able to afford would be a residence such as the home located at 4820 Burton Ave, which would be about $145,000 to purchase, which is within Jack's affordability, but he would then need to put about $50,000 into it just to rehab it and make it livable. This is the reality of many hardworking residents in Austin. They earn a steady income, but still can't afford to buy a home in their own community. And that is when a community land trust can step in to help. So how can a community land trust make home ownership possible for Jack? Well, through the CLT, The trust can purchase the home for $145,000 and invest an additional $50,000 to rehab it, ensuring that it's safe and move-in ready. And then Jack can take the pre-purchase counseling, which will help him qualify for around $25,000 in down payment assistance. Instead of struggling to afford market rate home, Jack is now able to purchase the house for $125,000, a price that fits within his budget. He also leases the land for the CLT for just $5 a month, a low fee, keeping his overall housing costs low and predictable. This model allows Jack to build equity, becoming a homeowner, and remaining in the community where he grew up, all without worrying about rising housing costs forcing him out. And just to note, these are not concrete actual numbers. This is just an example and numbers, how it can look when trying to acquire land within the CLT. So community land trusts aren't just an idea, they're a proven solution that has helped families across the country achieve stable, affordable homeownership. From the Chaplain Housing Trust in Vermont, one of the largest and most successful CLTs in the US, to the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative in Boston, which revitalized once abandoned communities. CLTs have been transforming neighborhoods for decades. And then we don't have to look far for inspiration. Right in Chicago, Here to Stay in Hermosa, Avondale, and Logan Square and Hobo Park provide affordable home ownership and community ownership of land through their community land trusts. So these success stories show us that with the right foundation and community support, a CLT in Austin can create real lasting change. So what's next, you ask? Well, we need community members, we need stakeholders, and we need local leaders to help shape this vision. A tripartite board, as mentioned in the video, is a three-part governance structure used by the Community Land Trust to ensure that balanced decision-making between key stakeholders happen. It consists of three equal groups of board members, each representing different interests. You have residents, homeowners, which are homeowners in the community and individually land trust homeowners. You have community representatives, which are usually local leaders, activists, and renters who advocate for broader community interests. And then you have public and expert stakeholders, which are usually professionals such as nonprofit leaders, financial experts, and government officials who provide technical expertise and policy guidance. So why is this structure important? It prevents conflicts of interest. No single group, homeowners, funders, or external partners can dominate decision-making. It ensures that there's long-term affordability, that keeps the CLT mission focused on community needs over profit motives, and it promotes democratic governance to make sure that all stakeholders have a voice in shaping policies and decisions. So here are just some organizations in Austin that have been involved in affordable housing or are familiar with the CLT model. These groups play a key role in housing efforts, and partnering with them can help build a stronger community-driven solution. And by fostering the following partnerships, the CLT in Austin can create a robust network of support, ensuring that there's comprehensive and sustainable solutions to the community's housing needs. So our goal is simple. It's to create a community land trust as either an independent entity or a subsidiary of an existing organization dedicated to acquiring land for permanently affordable housing, commercial spaces, and community needs. And this will allow us to acquire land and real estate for permanently affordable housing and commercial spaces, protecting our Austin families from displacement. So that's where we need your help. So the Austin CLT Working Group is forming, and we're looking for community partners to join subcommittees and just help with outreach and shape our strategic plan. I will be dropping a link in the chat for a Google form where you can complete our call to action survey. And that's just a great way to share your thoughts, express your interest in getting involved, and also just critiques on today's presentation. So I'm gonna drop that in the chat. And then just to sum up today's presentation, CLTs provide affordable home ownership by keeping housing prices between 25 to 30% below market value. Homeowners can make improvements, stay as long as they want, and pass homes down to their families. And this creates community stability, prevents displacement, and builds equity for future generations. And I want to thank everyone for listening. I am going to hand this portion of the Hub 101 over to Jenna, who's going to speak a little bit about the Oak Park Regional Center's upcoming housing fair.
Thanks so much, Lashana. Let me get my screen all teed up. Let's see. That presentation was dope. Thank you for that. And all right, go ahead and share. So just quickly before we get back into CLTs formally, coming up early next month on Saturday, May 3rd, we've got the annual Austin Community Housing Forum and Fair. It's at Michelle Clark High School, plenty of walkable street parking and lunches provided. Super excited about that. Feel free to roll up around 9:30. We're going to get started at 10 a.m. And at 10, we're going to be having a forum. The forum is going to include updates on the Laramie State Bank project, presentation about fair and just housing, another refresher on CLTs for folks who are coming to the fair but haven't unfortunately been to this hub meeting yet, to just introduce CLTs as a concept. We're going to be talking with Jeff Smith from DePaul, who runs the Institute for Housing Studies, about the Austin housing landscape and market trends and momentum with the CLT state task force that happened last year. Jeff and his team were instrumental in producing the report for that. And he and I are going to be really making the case for why this is the time for a CLT in Austin. And we're also going to bring our friend John from the Cook County Assessor's Office to explain more about how property tax is affected in a good way when putting homes into community land trusts. And then more on this soon, but we're going to have a panel facilitated by State Rep LaShawn Ford about the founding organizations in this initiative, talking about what CLTs mean for them and the community. In the afternoon, we're going to have breakout sessions on down payment assistance, getting home ownership ready, affordable home ownership opportunities, options to maintain and rehab your home, other property tax information and tax exempt applications, and questions you may have about working with the realtor. And again, there's free lunch. And so I'm going to drop a link in the chat as well, but feel free to take out your phone or screenshot this for the QR code if that's easier for you. You can also type the link in your browser that's noted here, or feel free to give us a call. I'm going to drop all this stuff in the chat and feel free to ask any questions about that. But let's keep going on the CLT front.
Great, groovy. Thanks, Jenna. That was amazing. I advise everyone, if you're interested in attending the fair, to use the QR code or the link to register.
Thank you, Jenna and LaShauna. So we will go ahead and move into the Q&A portion of the event. So for those watching live, please put your questions in the Q&A box now, and we'll go ahead and try to get your questions answered the best that we can. And I'll go ahead and go into question 1. So, who will own the properties that will be in the land trust?
I'm happy to kick it off and feel free to jump in. Or sorry, did you guys want to go first?
No, you're free. You can.
Right on. So community land trusts, as typically separate entities, are community owned and community controlled, often with that tripartite structure that LaShauna explained. How that's done is that the ownership of the home or whatever sort of land use, whether it be a business or an urban farm or something of that nature, is separated from the land it's on. Often what triggers market speculation is the price of the land, in the context of other market forces, development forces, stressors, gentrification, displacement, all of these things. It's targeting the land. And so homeowners own their home outright. And it's the CLT that retains ownership of the land underneath the home. And so traditionally, what happens is that the homeowner will formally lease the land, like LaShawna mentioned, from the CLT, but for all intents and purposes, they own their home. And the governance is a whole other conversation, but yeah, I think I'll pause there. Anything to add, LaShawna?
No, I think you explained that great, beautifully. Thank you. And I also just want to open up that Jenna will be assisting with like Q&As. Also, if Justin feels free, open it up to our founding organizations to also weigh in on this.
Great, thank you.
Yes. So the next question we have is, will there only be houses in the trust?
So that's why we like to open up this conversation for the community. So just to reiterate, we do not have an Austin Community Land Trust. That is something that we are trying to start. And through doing so, working with our working group, we're coming up and we're brainstorming, how can this look, right? There will be an affordable home model within that, but we can also broaden that. And as the video mentioned in Canada, we can have maybe community gardens. We can probably utilize some of those vacant lots for community spaces. So it can look beyond just housing, but there definitely would be an affordable home ownership component as part of the CLT.
Yeah, that's right. And just adding on to that a little bit, homes are the most popular form of buildings that are often incorporated in a CLT, but it's common all over the country to include things like commercial corridors and urban farms, as I mentioned, other types of housing. I should say that those are less well, I wouldn't say popular, but they're less sort of tried and true. Often what happens with commercial developments in CLT in particular is that they're layered with affordable housing incentives. So for example, there's a CLT in St. Paul, Minnesota called Rondo CLT, and they're just now opening their first commercial space. And basically it's a commercial space on the bottom and on the top is senior housing. And they were in part able to secure the construction and development financing by receiving federal tax credits that support senior housing. So it can be a little bit more complicated to get the proper financing for that, but there's plenty of good partners in this work, both here in Austin and in the greater Chicago area, who are committed to community development in this way, who can help sort of scaffold and piece together the necessary financing components to make the community's dream for whatever the land use it is that you decide possible. I'll check there.
No, thank you for that great answer. And I know you all went over it already, but can you just give like a brief summary of what is the purpose of a community land trust, just real quick again?
So as mentioned, I know, especially if you're an Austin resident and you've been observing in our community, you can see that things are changing, right? And through that change, there are a lot of longtime residents that are struggling. They're struggling to not only keep their homes, but they're struggling to even afford the rising rent costs. So part of the community land trust is allowing our long-term residents to not be displaced, right? Doing so, it's making the home permanently affordable, making sure that other residents can also stay in the communities and take advantage of that. Or you can possibly pass it on to your family so that you're improving generational wealth. So it could look many ways. Jenna, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I mean, that was stellar. I'll just add some additional context in the city of Chicago. So I come to working with OPRHC from being part of the city of Chicago's Community Wealth Building Initiative since 2023. And part of the really important sort of moral framework of that, and I'll drop the report in the chat, is thinking about whether it be community land trusts or worker cooperatives, limited equity housing co-ops, or community investment vehicles, that all of these approaches to a new way of being community-led is really focused on democratic governance and community ownership. So community ownership and community control in building our communities. And so when we think about CLT as one of these structures, yes, there is a really problematic racial wealth gap that is true all over, but feels particularly prevalent in the city of Chicago and certainly on the West Side. And community wealth building strategies like CLTs definitely help to mitigate that. But the primary purpose is not to build individual wealth. It's about community wealth. So it's not, trying to get more money for individual homeowners or families. It's really focusing on the community maintaining and retaining ownership and control of that wealth. And so a community land trust doesn't think about homes as investment properties. It thinks about homes as being affordable in perpetuity. So yeah, I think it's tough because traditionally in America, we think about homes as like the major source of investment. But what CLT does is say, hey, you should like totally get some modest equity on, the investments that you make in your home. But ultimately, you're going to sell that home back to the community land trust so it can be sold to another family at an affordable price. So in sum, it's not focusing on building wealth for individual families. It's focusing on building wealth for communities. And as a result, the less money that you spend on unaffordable housing, the more money that you have in your pocket and the more money you can spend focusing on creating a legacy.
Thank you.
Wonderfully said. Thank you for that answer. Another question.
Who pays property tax?
So generally, the homeowner, or the leaseholder will pay the property tax. They will pay a small monthly fee to allow the community land trust to acquire the land. In doing so, there are certain restrictions that will go into like the resale formula that will restrict certain values when you're trying to like sell the home. And I don't know if Jenna has like a better explanation or Justin has a better explanation about the property tax because it can be a little tricky with that one.
I'll just jump in and say, you're going to hear directly from the Cook County Assessors team at the Housing Fair on May 3rd. But that was exactly right. And basically, in Cook County, we have a partnership with the assessor's office who has built a shared equity portfolio, meaning properties that are deed restricted, which is like the housing is bound by a commitment to being permanently affordable. So that includes CLTs, limited equity housing co-ops. And so basically, once you verify that you're deed restricted, that you're in compliance with any sort of municipal agreements that you have to remain affordable, the assessor can potentially offer tax abatements. And what that means is it aligns with your affordable property valuation, not your market property valuation. So basically, you're taxed at a more affordable rate because you're promising to keep that property affordable in perpetuity. And the last thing I'll say about that is that once you're approved, if your property has been affordable in the meantime, before you were able to sort of formally hook up with the assessor, there's a possibility of a certificate of error going back up to 4 years to offer refunds on your property taxes. So there's a real financial incentive to, commit your home or being a part of a community land trust and purchasing a home for your property taxes. Justin, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that's really well put. I just wanted to ensure that what we're trying to do, and this is from just as a concerned person, is that we're trying to create equity, or create opportunities. What we are seeing is that the market forces in our country are drowning median income people, and they are not able to access the American dream. And so these are meant to be opportunities where people can step into something and then build themselves up to buy their own. So I just want to say that this is like a process. And so I wanted to assure people that there's every way that we can, we want to ensure that people are being thought of as centered in this process. That's all. But I appreciate everything you guys are putting forth.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And one of the things I think is important to reiterate here is how these organizations are working together. This is one more initiative of the many services, programs, opportunities that are already sort of are already happening and deep in motion and deep in our lives. And just to sort of tee up David Feinberg's question in the chat, shout out to David, who is the coordinator of the Chicago Owners Land Trust Federation, which we know fondly as the Cult Federation. This is a group of CLT projects who are both operating and in progress that have been meeting for many years in order to share resources, come together, do advocacy and policy work, share strategies, develop ways that we're talking about this work, push for media representation, really sort of have a citywide point of view on CLTs, while at the same time honoring the intricacies and nuances of them being in different neighborhoods all over the city. So right now, the CLT partners in the Cult Federation include Austin, North Lawndale, Inglewood, the Northwest Side, which includes like Logan Square, Avondale, et cetera, West Woodlawn, and Uptown. So that has been working together for a long time. And I bring that up because of David's question, but also to reiterate Justin's point of, there's lots of community supports that are around, and this is just another way to lift up all the important programs and work that are empowering Austin families.
Thank you for that answer. And going through the process of obtaining property through the land trust, what will be the resident requirements, or like what will qualify you to be able to receive property from the trust?
So right now, that's something that will go into the bylaws, which something we do not have right now. As Justin and Jenna mentioned, we are all working together with nonprofits and just organizations in the community to get this initiative started. So all of that, the requirements that will go into that are something that we will have to work on within our bylaws. But I will say that, of course, Austin residents would be top priority, as well as taking into account that AMI or the area medium income as well would go into figuring out who qualifies to be a part of the CLT.
I will add that area median income in general can be a problematic metric for affordable housing, particularly because AMI, area median income, generally refers to a larger area. So it's in Chicagoland, it refers to what's called a metropolitan statistical area, which is like the rich suburbs and the north side. And so like the average of all of those median incomes is not necessarily representative of incomes in Austin or the west side. And so that's where, to Lashana's point, being really particular about the bylaws can help us craft something that is specific and meaningful for the realities here in Austin.
Thank you.
Okay, so one of the questions are, can I sell a house or property once it's a part of the trust?
So in order to make the home permanently affordable, there are certain restrictions that will go into the resale formula, right? To make sure that the home is permanently affordable for not only the resident, but also if someone else from the Austin community was to come and buy the home. So yes, you are allowed, to answer your question, to sell your community land trust property, but there will be certain restrictions that will go into the resale formula that will restrict.
And just to put a fine point on that, you sell the home back to the CLT, not on the market. And that's part of what the bylaws do to bind it to the CLT ownership. Because remember, the CLT still owns the land underneath it.
Thank you for that clarification. And we have a question about the housing fair that's happening on May 3rd. Someone wants to know, would there be a Spanish language option available for that event?
I'll let Jenna answer that question.
That's right. Yeah, we have some Spanish speaking staff that will be on site during that time. And if Yvonne, if you want to reach out to me, I'm going to drop my email in the chat. We would love to make accommodations for Spanish speaking residents. Just let us know and we can plan for it. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I think we have time for just a couple of more questions. I do have one question. So, besides the housing being affordable, what are some of the other benefits that we may not know about joint acquiring property through the land trust?
I'll share that. Historically, CLTs, the research shows that in addition to not only keeping, your family in community, it supports your neighbors in community. You still have home price appreciation. Again, this goes back to the specific resale formula that Lashana mentioned, but traditionally the most popular method is that there's like 2 to 3% equity that you can get in your home every year. So even though it's sort of slower than the traditional market, your home price is consistent and stable, and that's really important. The research shows that CLTs have much lower delinquency and foreclosure rates than regular housing. It has a lower annual move rate, so families feel more comfortable and stable to stay in their housing. That sort of goes along with the sort of foreclosure and displacement statistic. You can pass your home down to your family. So even though you don't own the land, you own the home. And you can pass it down and they can pass it down. And it's just that whenever your family is done living in that home, they sell it back to the CLT so it can be passed to the next family for affordable living. And really, it's just that perpetual process of ensuring that people can stay in Austin that is the biggest, I would say, perk of moving forward with the CLT in the neighborhood. Justin, Lashana, other thoughts?
Yeah, other than not statistically, but anecdotally, part of what I've seen when I've looked at community land trust is that people typically do this process and they get their feet underneath them and then they sell it back to the trust, but they also use that equity to move into their own homes. So this is not seen as in like, and not to say that someone couldn't, but like a 30-year mortgage thing where you sit there forever, but it is the statistics that I've read, and I can't make them generalizable because I haven't done any kind of longitudinal cross-reference study, but just the stuff that I've read, just saying that this is an opportunity for people to getting the practice of owning home ownership and having it be a starter home, if you will. And I don't want to say that it has to be a starter home. You could spend your life in it, but it's just that has been the practice from what I've read and the data that I've looked at.
That's 100% right. And just to add to that, there's also, the benefits of that pertaining to years as well, allowing them to age in place. Like, Lashana mentioned that earlier, just bringing that around. And to Justin's earlier point, the more money that you save by not spending it on extractive housing, the more money you can then spend on other things in your life. You're building that equity to take into other parts of your, existence. And maybe some of that money, to Justin's point, is spent on saving for a down payment for a larger home for your family as you grow, or as you decide to, pick a different place to live. So I think it's important that CLTs are able to be starter homes, homes for seniors to age in place, and sometimes forever homes. But, that's up for the community to decide.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of Justin and Jenna, like for some people, yeah, this is their forever home. But for some, they're just trying to get their feet wet in home ownership and what goes into that. And by being linked to the Community Land Trust, you're set up with all of these nonprofits and organizations that can provide you with the resources and the help to make you a stronger owner and being able to take the equity that you get from your CLT home if you're willing to sell it back to the CLT and to get your forever home. And I think also something that I like to add, part of what goes into Community Land Trust is community. So I think feeling closer and more connected to your community, not wanting to leave your community just because you can afford to do so, but wanting to stay to make sure that it allows others to also afford to stay here. So I just like to think of it like this is community driven, not just by a bunch of nonprofits. So you have to have a passion to like not only want to stay and evolve and grow your community, but also to help others in doing so. So.
No, sounds good. Sounds good. I think that was all the questions for today. So we can go ahead and just close out. Thank you everyone again for tuning in and being here. Of course, big special thank you to Lashana, Jenna, Athena, Justin. Shouts out to WHA and Oak Park Regional Housing. Yeah, and until next time, I think Zenobia wants to leave us with a little word.
Like we mentioned earlier, the Hub is here to connect you to resources. Even if something isn't the right fit for you, as the Community Resource Coordinator, I work directly with the participants of the Hub, so I'll be following up with you if you requested any additional services in your registration form.
Thank you. Thank you. And you can go ahead and register for our next Hub 101, which will be a special one. We're continuing on the Aspire Center theme, so be on the lookout for that. And again, thank you for everyone for attending today. Feel free to reach out if you would like to be connected. And if you have more questions about the Community Land Trust and concerns about where it's going, please don't hesitate to reach out. If you're in need of any services, please don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, we just dropped the link for the questions. So please feel free to go ahead and add any questions you have to that. And yeah, share it with everyone in your network. And see you later. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.